Hello everyone, welcome to another video. This is part 2 of SRE question and answers. So I have already created one video which was part 1. So if you have not watched that video, the link will be in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and watch it. Alright, so let's start part 2. So the question number 1 is how to scrape metrics for a new application. Can you explain with an example? Here the interviewer wants to know if you have ever communicated some metrics for any new application which you can later use to monitor. Okay, so scraping means pulling the metrics out of an application. So that is called scraping. Okay, so the answer is going to differ depending on the type of tool you are using. Here I am taking the example of a Prometheus tool. So let's see the answer. So we can use service monitors to scrape metrics for a new application. As I'm using Prometheus, so I can set targets for it to monitor and scrape. Okay, so here I've given an example also. So what you have to do is you have to create a resource which is called service monitor. Okay, and this service monitor is going to link to your application service, okay, using its labels, and then it is going to scrape the metrics from that new service. Okay, so how it's going to do, so let's just read through first. So for example, if we have a service running inside a Kubernetes cluster which we want to monitor, we can create a resource of kind service monitor and then use the labels of the service inside the spec section of our service monitor to scrape the metrics. So as an example, as you can see on the left hand side, so this is the service which is the newly built service, and we want to scrape the metrics from this particular service. Okay, so what we can do is we have to create one resource called service monitor resource. Okay, and in this, as you can see, in the spec section, we are using the key of one of the labels of the service here. So if you see, there are two labels which are available with our service: app frontend and env prod. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use this key of this label which is app. Okay, so in this way you can relate, you can specify the this service that this service monitor has to monitor. Okay, so in this way we can link these two together. Okay, and apart from this, if you see, I also have this port configuration in my service YAML manifest file of this service. So here the name of the port is web port. So I'm trying to use this port as the endpoint in my service monitor configuration here. So see, the name is web port, and here also I'm using the same name of the service to link these two. Okay, similarly, if you have ever worked with this labels and selectors inside Kubernetes, so I'm using the same concept here under this selector section where I'm going to match the labels of the service. So here I'm trying to use this other label which is available within my service. So the key and value of the entire label will be entered under this match labels section inside my service monitor configuration YAML manifest. Okay, so in this way, what it's going to do after you create this resource, it is going to scrape the metrics from this service. Okay, so the main answer here is we have to use this something called a service monitor to scrape metrics from a new service or application, and this is how we can link our service to this new service monitor. Okay, I hope it was clear. If you still have doubts, you can reach out to me in comment section. All right, let's go to our question number 2, which is, have you deployed any application to EKS? If yes, then how you have deployed it? Okay, so once again here the interviewer is trying to know how much you know about EKS clusters, and if you have ever worked with any production grade application. Okay, so here the answer that I gave is yes, I have deployed multiple applications on EKS. The first thing is to develop the application locally on a dev machine. So this is what generally happens in different organizations, that you have a developer he has access to a dev machine which he uses to develop the application. This dev machine or VM will have a Docker Compose and some other tools installed which he needs to, write his application code. Okay, right? And then once the developer has written the application, he's going to containerize the application, okay, using Docker file, okay, and then then the application is going to be tested, okay, locally on that instance. Now, the thing is, the containerization part can be the responsibility of a DevOps engineer also. It depends really, but I think, both a developer and the DevOps engineer or the SRE should know how to containerize the application or how to write a Docker file for a particular application. They should both work together to produce this file and to make it really efficient. Okay, so here I'm just taking the example of the developer writing the Docker file as well. Okay, so the developer is going to containerize the application and then he's going to test it locally on his dev machine. If it runs successfully, then we can push this to our image repository. Here I'm taking the example of AWS ECR or Elastic Container Registry, but you can use any other repository as well of your choice. But since we are using AWS services, so EKS and ECR both are AWS services, so it is easier to integrate ECR with EKS. Okay, so after the successful testing, the image will be pushed to ECR. Then to deploy this new image inside your EKS, the first thing is you should have your EKS cluster ready. All right, so once again, creating the cluster, so there are multiple methods to do it. Here I'm using Terraform as my infrastructure as code to create the cluster. The other way is to use EKSCTL tool to create the cluster. Depending on your choice, you can use, but whatever I have used, I've mentioned the same here. Okay, so after you have the cluster ready with you, so generally what happens if you have a very simple application with no complexity, then you can use the this manual deployment or service YAML manifest file. Okay, deployment service file or config maps and other resources. So this is actually a more manual way of deploying the application, but the more advanced way or the better approach is to use Helm charts inside your cluster to deploy the application. That's actually simple and less time consuming and really efficient as well. So here I'm using Helm charts to deploy my application instead of writing the manual deployment and service YAML manifest file. Okay, so that's what I've mentioned here. We utilize Helm charts to deploy our applications. Also, we are utilizing ALB ingress controller. Now, you will use ingress controller to route traffic to your backend services. Okay, so here I'm using in ALB because I'm going to use the I'm going to use application load balancer. So I'm using ALB ingress controller, but you do have other options as well like Nginx, or you also have traffic, and there are some other controllers as well available depending on your choice. But here I'm using ALB ingress controller. Okay, then I'm also I also used Route 53 for DNS configurations, but once again you can use external DNS services as well. Okay, then to control the developer access, we use RBAC or role based access control. So this is one of the best ways by which you can control access to your resources within the cluster within AWS account. So so I'm using RBAC here. And then I mentioned that most of our Kubernetes applications utilize AWS RDS instances for database. So you have the option to create a standalone database instance on an EC2, or you can use an auto scaling group also. But it is always better if you can use the AWS RDS services. So you have this controller called ACK RDS controller, which you can use to create your RDS instance. It is going to link your RDS instance with your pod application in a very easier way. So that's what I have mentioned here, that you can use this ACK RDS controller to link your RDS instance to your application pods inside the cluster. Okay, then I also mentioned that the application source code, the Docker file and Helm charts, they all reside in GitLab repositories. So as you know now, AWS code commit has been deprecated. So no new customer can use AWS code commit. Only the existing users may continue to use it. Okay. So here I'm using GitLab as my source code, this source code management tool. Okay, and then I also mentioned that we follow this GitOps approach, where we're using Argo CD as our I mean as our CD tool, which is going to continuously monitor our repository for any change, and if any change happens, then it will try to sync that change to our deployment, and then it is going to deploy the updated code and show us the status of the application. So this is all, what I have done. But once again, this answer can have, this question can have different answers depending on, depending on your, experience with different tools and what do you call technologies. So it depends on that. But whatever I have used, I have mentioned the same here. All right, let's go to our next question, which is list a few automation tasks that you have completed. So let's see the answer of this question. So I mentioned 2 automation tasks that I completed. The first one is I worked on automatic shutdown and restart of some of the EC2 instances in the off hours, as those were underutilized. So for that, I used AWS SDK for Python, Boto 3 with Lambda, and scheduled those using AWS EventBridge cron jobs. So the use case was that there were a few EC2 instances which were not used after the off hours. So when I was given the task of finding a way by which we can shut down these instances in the off hours and then automatically restart them at the start of business hours. So for that, what I did, I used this AWS SDK for Python, which is called Boto 3. I integrated it with a Lambda function, and then I used this AWS EventBridge cron jobs to schedule the shutdown and restart of these EC2 instances. So this is what I said in the interview. Then the other automation task that I was able to complete is I helped the security team in configuring the ECR image scanning results to an email. So the requirement was that we should have some automation wherein we can scan any new image that is pushed to our ECR repositories, and then the scanned results can be sent on an email. So what I did, since I was using this tool called Tenable, so Tenable has its own Docker image that we can deploy on an EC2 instance. Okay, and then I'm giving I'm having a role attached to the instance where we are creating the container which has access to our ECR repositories and our Tenable UI. We can have this container automatically scan any new image in the ECR repositories and then post the result on our Tenable UI, and then from Tenable UI we can configure an email to a distributed to a distribution list of our choice. Okay, so that's what I did. So I helped the security team in configuring this ECR image scanning results to an email. I deployed a standalone Docker container on an EC2 instance with the Docker image that is able to scan our ECR repositories and post results on our scanning tool user interface, which is a Tenable in my case. Okay, so this is the name of the tool, okay, which you can use to scan the vulnerabilities in your environment. Then this Docker container will run in loop. So I use this restart policy of Docker container so that it continues to run in the loop, and it is able to scan any new image that is pushed to our ECR repository, and then we can send an email from our Tenable UI with these scanned results on a schedule. Okay, on an email. Okay, so this is how I was able to complete this task as well. So these two are the automation tasks that I completed, but once again, the answer can vary from person to person. So whatever tasks I was able to complete, I said it in the interview. So you can take an example and build your own answers as well. If you have any doubts, you can reach out to me in the comment section. All right, let's move on to the next question. What do you understand by the terms SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs? Now, if you have attended SRE interviews multiple times, so this is like a repeatable question that you will see a lot. Okay, so these are one of the three important terms that you should know as a site reliability engineer specifically. Okay, so let's learn the concepts of this. So these are important terms when it comes to SRE. It is used to measure the service reliability. So basically, these terms are used to measure the performance of a particular application in numbers. So you are able to quantify your services performance, you can say. So let's learn about the terms. SLIs, which stands for service level indicators. So it defines the reliability of a service by numerical indicators to measure it over a period of time. These metrics can indicate the overall health, performance, or latency of a service. So basically, it suggests that you should have some indicators or some metrics that you can use to measure the performance of a particular service. Okay, the examples are, it can be latency of the application, it can be throughput, it can be the errors occurred per X number of requests for a particular application. Okay, so these are the indicators or the real metrics that you use to quantify your application's performance. Then SLOs stand for service level objectives. Now, using these indicators, what objectives do we want to define or achieve? Okay, so those objectives are called service level objectives. So these are the range of values of SLIs or service level indicators that needs to be maintained for a service to be acceptably reliable. Okay, as an example, 0.1 to 0.5% of 404 errors are acceptable for a specific application, which means that this is the range that we want to achieve our service level objectives. Okay, so in this case, as you can see, this is the service level indicator and this is the service level objective of this service level indicator. Okay, so if we are able to achieve this SLI, this SLO of this SLI, we are able to achieve our goal. Okay, as a site reliability engineer. Next is this service level agreements. So service level agreement is an agreement which happens between the service provider and our end user or customer. Okay, so it defines the agreement on the levels of service expected by the end users as defined through service level objectives. So generally, it is the actual contractual agreement between the service provider and end users or customers. So just understand that whenever the customer wants to buy some service from a service provider, okay, so there will be one contractual agreement that happens between the service provider and the customer. So it will have the terms and conditions of this this service level agreement. Okay, so how you can define that? As an example, if you see, if service A goes down impacting 100 plus users, the service should be restored within 2 hours as this is a priority 1 incident. So this is one of the service level agreements which is mentioned, okay, by the customer and assigned by the service provider, that if my service, if your service A goes down and it's impacting 100 plus users, then this service should be restored within 2 hours as this is a priority 1 incident for the customer. So if you see here how these three things are related to each other. Okay, now if you see these 2 hours, so these 2 hours are it is our service level objective, that for any service that impacts 100 plus users, we should be able to restore the service within 2 hours. So this 2 hours is our service level objective, and how we are going to achieve this goal of 2 hours by using service level indicators, okay, which can help us troubleshoot the issue and restore the service within 2 hours. So this is how these three things are related to each other. I hope the concept is clear, but once again, if you have any doubts, you can reach out to me in comment section, and I'll be answering all your questions. All right. Now next, move on to the last question, which is what is the toughest challenge that you have faced and how did you overcome it? Okay. So you should always be prepared for this type of question in a DevOps interview or an SRE interview or a cloud engineer interview or a Linux administrator interview. So whatever is your field, you should always be ready for this type of question. Okay. So let's see how I answered it. So I gave the example of my this Drupal application that I used to manage in my last organization. So I said this is related to a Drupal application that I manage and is critical to customer business. One day the service went down on Monday morning after a recent change by the developer team. The issue quickly got escalated as the CEO was also impacted. In this case, the CEO actually sent an email to the team that I'm not able to access a particular website. Okay, and that website was down at that time. So of course it's going to get escalated a lot. So that's what happened at that time. So we all got on a call to troubleshoot the issue, me and the management and the developer team. Okay, we all got on a call to troubleshoot this issue. The site was throwing an error related to PHP-FPM service, okay, which was failing. So the first thing that I did, I tried to roll back the change to the previous version, but unfortunately it did not work for us. Okay, then suddenly I remembered that there's a Drupal community which provides troubleshooting steps to known issues. So I tried to search this error message there, and luckily I found the troubleshooting steps. Okay, I quickly followed it and reconfigured this PHP-FPM service which was throwing error and restarted the service after the reconfiguration. The site came back up within 25 minutes. Okay, we received appreciation from the CEO himself. So this is like one of the toughest challenges, because since CEO escalated the issue, we had to get this service up and running ASAP. So luckily I found this article on this Drupal community, and I was able to follow it, and I was able to restore the service. So this is how you can explain any scenario that you faced in the past, which was your toughest challenge. All right. So these are the questions I wanted to discuss. I hope it was beneficial to you. Okay. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel. All right. And I'm going to see you in the next one. And one more thing, I'm going to put this PPT in the description of this video. And similar thing I've done in my previous video also, this part 1, the PPT can be downloaded from the description of that video. All right, guys, that's all for this one. And I'm going to see you in the next one.